In Doom 2016, the enigmatic identity of the Doomslayer had been a subject of extensive discussion among fans and scholars of the game. A compelling theory posited that the Doomslayer is, in fact, the Betrayer, a character introduced in Doom Eternal. This essay examines the Slayer's testaments from Doom 2016 to explore evidence supporting this old theory. Throughout Doom 2016, players encounter a series of inscriptions known as the Slayer's Testaments. These records chronicle the Doomslayer's origins, battles, and the fear he instills in demonic forces. Notably, the Testaments depict the Doomslayer as a figure of immense power and relentless vengeance. In the First Age, in the first battle, when the shadows first lengthened, one stood. He chose the path of perpetual torment. In his ravenous hatred, he found no peace, and with boiling blood, he scoured the umbral plains, seeking vengeance against the dark lords who had wronged him. The opening of the Slayer's Testaments establishes the Doomslayer as a figure consumed by unrelenting hatred and vengeance. The phrase perpetual torment suggests a personal tragedy that motivates his crusade. This aligns with the backstory of the Betrayer from Doom 2016, who made a deal with Hell to save his dying son, only to see his son transformed into the icon of sin. The regret and fury stemming from this betrayal fit the description of a man driven to endless violence against Hell. Tempered by the fires of Hell, his iron will remain steadfast through the passage that preys upon the weak. For alone he was the Hell Walker, the unchained predator who sought retribution in all quarters, dark and light. This passage highlights the Doomslayer's indomitable will and singular focus on vengeance. The use of terms like retribution and Hell Walker further suggests a deeply personal vendetta against Hell. If the Doomslayer is indeed the Betrayer, this unrelenting wrath would stem from his role in bringing about his own suffering and the horrors unleashed by his actions. His crusade would then serve as both punishment for Hell and penance for himself. And in his conquest against the blackened souls of the doomed, his prowess was shown. In his crusade, the Seraphim bestowed upon him terrible power and speed, and with his might, he crushed the obsidian pillars of the blood temples. He set forth without pity upon the beasts of the 9 circles. This testament describes the Doomslayer's transformation into an almost godlike warrior through the intervention of the Seraphim. The mention of without pity emphasizes his total loss of humanity, which could be interpreted as the result of his guilt and self-loathing as the Betrayer. Furthermore, the destruction of Hell's strongholds and his relentless war on its denizens may symbolize his attempt to undo the consequences of his own fateful decisions. And those that tasted the bite of his sword named him the Doomslayer. Tempered by the fires of Hell, his iron will remain steadfast through the passage that preys upon the weak. The Slayer's unyielding resolve and transformation into a legendary figure suggest a man who has suffered immeasurable loss. If the Doomslayer is indeed the Betrayer, this unwavering determination reflects his penance for the pain he caused and his need to atone by eradicating the forces of Hell. The Slayer's Testaments repeatedly describe the Doomslayer as unyielding and incorruptible, terms that initially seem to suggest a purity of purpose and resistance to evil. However, when analyzed through the lens of demonic language and context, these descriptors take on a more sinister and profound meaning. To the demons, unyielding and incorruptible signify not moral virtue, but an inability to be manipulated, bargained with, or swayed from his destructive path. The Doomslayer is no longer a man who can be reasoned with or tempted. He has become a force of nature, immune to all forms of influence, including those that demons typically rely upon to corrupt and control. The term unyielding in the Testaments refers to the Doomslayer's relentless pursuit of vengeance. In demonic terms, this is not merely a description of stubbornness or resolve. It is an acknowledgement of their inability to halt his onslaught. Demons, who thrive on exploiting human weaknesses like fear, greed, or despair, find themselves powerless against the Slayer. He does not pause, hesitate, or succumb to the emotional or psychological traps that would ensnare lesser beings. This concept ties directly to the Slayer's identity as the betrayer. If the Slayer's motivations stem from an overwhelming sense of guilt and a desire for atonement, then his resolve is fueled by an inner torment that demons cannot exploit. Unlike mortals who might waver or falter in the face of hell's horrors, the Slayer's pain and anger have hardened him into an unstoppable weapon of destruction. In the context of hell, incorruptible does not imply moral righteousness. Rather, it means that the Doomslayer is beyond the reach of hell's greatest weapon, temptation. Demons are masters of corruption, preying on human flaws and desires to bend their victims to their will. Yet, the Slayer is described as incorruptible because he has no desires left for them to manipulate. If the Slayer was indeed the betrayer, this incorruptibility becomes even more poignant. Having already succumbed to hell's temptations once, to save his son, he has experienced the catastrophic consequences of his mistake. This would explain why he can no longer be reasoned or bargained with. He has learned, through immense suffering, that there is no salvation or redemption in dealing with hell. His incorruptibility, then, is born from his self-inflicted tragedy, making him a figure who no longer seeks anything but the total annihilation of his enemies. To the demons, the Doomslayer is no longer a mortal man but an elemental force, an embodiment of wrath and vengeance. His unyielding and incorruptible nature makes him a paradox in the demonic hierarchy. While demons revel in chaos and destruction, they are also creatures of manipulation and control. The Slayer's immunity to their tactics renders them utterly powerless in his presence. This is why they fear him so deeply. He represents a pure and uncontrollable force that disrupts the very fabric of their existence. The Testaments describe him as the Hell Walker, a title that reinforces this notion. He is not simply a warrior but a being who moves through the realms of hell with impunity, unbound by the rules that govern mortals and demons alike. His actions are not driven by strategy or reason but by an unrelenting drive to destroy, making him more akin to a natural disaster than a man. When the Testaments describe the Doomslayer as unyielding and incorruptible, they reveal more about how the demons perceive him than about his actual character. To the denizens of hell, these terms are not compliments but expressions of despair. The Doomslayer cannot be manipulated, reasoned with, or stopped. He is a force of nature born from loss, guilt, and fury, a being who exists only to bring about the destruction of hell itself. By viewing him through this demonic lens, the narrative of Doom, 2016, gains additional layers of complexity, transforming the Slayer into an anti-hero who is both tragic and terrifying. In Doom 2016, the Doomslayer was more than a mere gun-toting hero. He was a near-mythical figure of vengeance and wrath, woven into the fabric of the Hell Priest's fear and loathing. The Codex entries spoke of the Slayer as a tragic and destructive force, with subtle allusions suggesting he was the betrayer, a human who had made a grave mistake by siding with hell in a misguided attempt to save his son. The Slayer's interactions with elements like the Hell Priests and Vega hinted at deeper layers of sacrifice, betrayal, and loss. This iteration of the Slayer carried a distinct weight of mystery. He was not just a man. He was a symbol of unrelenting retribution, someone who had paid a terrible price for his war against hell. The ambiguity surrounding his identity allowed players to project their imagination onto him, creating a powerful narrative hook. In Doom Eternal, the developers redefined the Doomslayer as Doomguy, a continuation of the same Marine from the classic Doom games. While this retcon brought nostalgia to longtime fans, it created a narrative dissonance. The mythic Slayer from Doom 2016 was now anchored to a character whose identity had never been associated with tragedy or deeper emotional weight. The Slayer was reduced from an enigmatic figure of wrath and betrayal to a nostalgic callback. This change undermined the dramatic tension and tragedy hinted at in Doom 2016. The Slayer's connection to the betrayer was severed, leaving the character's emotional arc underdeveloped. By shifting the focus to Doomguy's legacy, the story sidelined the Slayer's supposed loss and redemption arc, opting instead for a more straightforward homage to the franchise's roots. By abandoning the Slayer's identity as the betrayer, Doom Eternal sacrificed a potentially profound exploration of guilt and atonement. In Doom 2016, the Slayer was more than a protagonist. He was a tragic figure whose relentless fury stemmed from a deeply personal loss. This could have been explored further in Doom Eternal, deepening the emotional stakes of his crusade against Hell. Instead, Doom Eternal focused on expanding the Doom universe with lore-heavy elements like the Sentinel backstory and the Makers, which, while interesting, felt detached from the Slayer's emotional journey. The Slayer became less of a character and more of a conduit for exploring this expanded mythology. The decision to shift the Doom Slayer's identity from the betrayer to Doomguy diluted the narrative weight that Doom 2016 had carefully constructed. While the nostalgic appeal of linking the Slayer to the classic Doom games may have resonated with longtime fans, it came at the cost of the mythic, tragic depth that had made the character so compelling in the reboot. By sidelining the Slayer's connection to loss and betrayal, Doom Eternal missed an opportunity to craft a truly profound narrative arc, choosing instead to prioritize nostalgia over thematic richness.